So tonight is Zois Chanukah, and tonight we lit the last and 8th candle of Chanukah, and it's a very special day. So whenever we say goodbye to magnificent days, we always need to ask ourselves, what do we take away? What do we take home from these magnificent days of Chanukah? So the sugya we'll deal with tonight is on one hand still Hilchas Chanukah because it is Chanukah, but it's more a general discussion about the Birkas HaMitzvah when a Shaliach performs a mitzvah for others. The Magen Avraham in Siman Tov Reish Ayin Vav quotes the Bach. If a person was already madlik neiros in his own home, and then he lights in a neighbor's home, and this is a very common question in the past 2 years and this year as well. I was asked by many families, the husband is in Miluim, the wife is home alone with little kids. She doesn't feel comfortable lighting the menorah alone and saying the brocha, even though so she asked the neighbor, could you come in and light the menorah for us? Who makes the brocha? Does the balas habayis? It's her mitzvah, her home, her menorah. Or is it rather the person that is lighting the menorah that would say the bracha? So the Magen Avraham quotes the Bach, and the Bach says, if the woman is present, then the one lighting the menorah could say a bracha. If the woman is not present, then he can't say a bracha. So let me make this clear. If nobody lives in the house, there's no mitzvah of Chanukah at all. And this is something which some poskim have a different opinion. If one leaves his house and he's not going to be home from Plaga Mincha till the next day in the morning, and this is usually asked if people fly, I'm going to be on a flight all night. Do I have a mitzvah of Chanukah? So obviously don't try to be madlik neiros Chanukah on a plane. So some gedolim say, take a flashlight, and you're yotze lighting a flashlight. One choshev gadol, and for some reason I'm not quoting his name because I disagree with this psak, says if you're on a plane, you could light a flashlight with a bracha. And I disagree. I think Ner Chanukah needs to be psilos ishmanim, kederech shetiknu chachamim. Needs to be fuel, any form of fuel, and fire. So if nobody is home, then there is no mitzvah of Chanukah at all. Some gedolim say if it's 2 or 3 days, you need to have a Shaliach to light in your domain, which I disagree with. We find the din of chashta only if a person lives in the house and he has 2 psochim on 2 different sides. But if nobody is home, there is no mitzvah of Chanukah. So the Bach paskins, and the Magen Avraham quotes the Bach, if you light in a neighbor's home for a woman because her husband isn't home, or it might be an almana or a grusha, and you're doing a favor, and you light for the bnei habayis, even though you're already lit with a bracha in your home, if they're present, you say a bracha to be moitzi them. If nobody is in the house right now, or no gedolim are home, but they will be home tonight, they're coming home later, so they do have a chiyuv of Ner Chanukah, but if she isn't present, you don't say a bracha. And the question is, why? In Siman Tov Lamed Beis, those are the halachas of Bedikas Chametz. It is clear in Tov Lamed Beis, if a person makes a shliach to be boidik chumetz in his domain, in his house, an elderly person, he has difficulty being boidik chumetz, or a person that has more than one home. So many of us in this modern day and age have more than one home. You make a shliach to be boidik chumetz in a house somewhere, then the shliach makes the bracha, even though the balabais is not there. So what would be the difference between Chanukah and Bedikas Chumetz? Why regarding Bedikas Chumetz we say, the one that's Bedikas Chumetz makes the bracha, the house isn't his, the Chumetz isn't his, the mitzvah isn't his. He's just a shliach, and nevertheless, he makes a bracha regardless of whether the balabais is present or not. And when it comes to Chanukah, he can't make a bracha only if the balabais is there and he is moitzi her yedei chayvasam. So I quoted him in Tov Lamed Beis. Tov Lamed Beis is the din of Bedikas Chumetz. If they're Higia Lachinech, you could be moitzi. If they're not Higia Lachinech, then there is no mitzvah at all. So Tov Lamed Beis is Bedikas Chumetz. Tov Lamed Daled is Bitul Chumetz. And in Tov Lamed Daled, Mogen Avraham Sivkot and Tes writes, there's a machlokes in a shaynim whether a shliach could be mevatel chumetz or not. Shulchan Aruch paskins a shliach could be mevatel chumetz. The Mogen Avraham says, but the balabais needs to stand next to him, kamo shekosavnu b'simin tov reish ayin vav, regarding Birkas ner Chanukah. What is the tzad shova? What is the common denominator between bittul chumetz and ner Chanukah? By bittul chumetz there is no bracha. So what do these two things have in common? That a shliach cannot be mevatel chumetz only if the balabayis is there, and a madlik ner Chanukah babayis she'enoi shaloi can say a bracha only if the balas abayis is present. And why would it be different than bedikas chumetz, where we learn that the one that is by the chumetz before, he is the one that says the bracha, even though it's not his mitzvah, it's not his chumetz, it's not his house. The machzis a shekel, Semetov Lamed Daled, has an interesting interpretation of the Mogen Avraham. Kosho laso shliach b'mitzvah shehi choyves aguf, and that is why the balas abayis needs to be present. Kosha laso shliach b'mitzvah shehi choyves aguf. What does that mean? And therefore, the balas abayis is her mitzvah; she needs to be present. And I ask Mimo Nafshach, if shlichus doesn't apply, what will it help if she's present? After all, he is the one that's lighting. If shlichus does apply, why does she need to be present? So it's difficult to understand the machzis a shekel kosher las shliach b'mitzvah shehi choyves haguf. And what does it mean, mitzvah shehi choyves haguf? I don't have time tonight to once again delve into the huge sugya of shlichus b'mitzvahs. Which mitzvahs does shlichus apply? Which mitzvahs does shlichus not apply? I'll just briefly say my mahalach, which I think is so poshut. Shlichus doesn't apply to any mitzvah that is essentially avodas Hashem. Shlichus applies to all the mitzvahs that are about the result, about the outcome. Bedikas Chumetz is all about Bal Yaroa v'Bal Yamotza. Tfilas Kalim is about being able to eat in these Kalim. Even Milas Aben is about Ois Bris Kodesh. Whenever the mitzvah is essentially about the result, Shlichus applies. Ein Shlichus v'Avodas hu Kail. So to me, this seems so pushet that I wonder why so many achronim are troubled and the machadash chedushim. How would you react to a person that says, I had a very difficult life, so much pain and so much suffering, I really find it hard to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm struggling with the mitzvah of Yohavto as Hashem Elokecho. But I know a wonderful Avrech, he has a wonderful life, and I give him $1,000 a month, and he's my Shaliach to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why are you laughing? Obviously, I said something that's totally ridiculous. And I heard some spontaneous laughter. Or a similar question, a person has so much difficulty, he has problems with Emunah Seyichud. He has problems in Emunah. But he has a Shliach, he's my Shliach to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ridiculous. I think it's mamish the same in Avodas Hashem. Ein Shlichus le'Emunah Seyichud, ein Shlichus le'Avos Hashem, ein Shlichus le'Avodas Hashem. And any mitzvah that is not meant to bring forth a result, an outcome, but all the mitzvahs that are basically, fundamentally, essentially avodas Hashem, like davening, like lulav, achilas matzah v'moror, hanochas tefillin, these are all avodas Hashem. Kamo she'ein shlichus la'ahavas Hashem, ve'ein shlichus liyiras Hashem, ein shlichus la'avodas Hashem. To me, it is so pushing. So why does this Ktsaisa Koshin and Simon Kuf Pei Bay struggle and the Chsam Soif and Simareish Aleph? To me, it's as simple as that. Ein Shlichus La'avodas Hashem, because each and every Jew needs to be an Oved Hashem. Just like each and every Jew needs to have a Havas Hashem and Yiras Hashem and Emunas, HaYichud. We all need to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But coming back to our Sugya, what does the Machzah Shekel mean? Kosher lasis shliach b'mitzvah shem avodas haguf. Why would Chanukah be avodas haguf more than Mila, Hafroshes Tumas Amaisis? What is special about Chanukah? L'chayre, it's about the result. It's about persumanism. The Yad Ephraim and Reb Baruch Frankel, two great Gedolim who were contemporaries, Reb Ephraim Zalman Margolis and Reb Baruch Frankel and their Hagos and the Shulchan Aruch, go to the other extreme and they say, when a person lights Ner Chanukah in the home of another, you don't need shlichus at all. You don't need shlichus. Because essentially the mitzvah is not lighting the candle, but sheyehei haner doluk. So shlichus is not even necessary. And because the person lighting the candle is not a shaliach, he can't say a bracha. When you're a shaliach to perform a mitzvah, you could say the bracha. But because by Ner Chanukah shlichus isn't necessary, so the person lighting Ner Chanukah in a neighbor's home is not a shaliach because there is no need for shlichus. Shlichus is necessary when you need to do a maisa, when you need to perform an act. Shlichus shalodem kamoiseh, my shliach does it, it's considered as if I did it. But by Ner Chanukah, shlichus isn't necessary. And therefore, if he's not a shliach, he can't make a bracha. And that is why the woman needs to be present. But the question would be, why is Ner Chanukah different than Bedikas Chametz? Both mitzvahs are about the result. The reason we need to be Bedikas Chametz is because we shouldn't have Chametz on Pesach. That's the entire Tekana. So why would it be different than Ner Chanukah? The Bachan Simen Tofresh Ayin Zayin, explaining the din of Tzorach lehishtatev bepruta, there's an interesting Bach. And the Bach says, the Ikar mitzvahs Ner Chanukah is shehei shemen shelo dolek. And that is why Tzorach lehishtatev bepruta. So many Achronim deal with this question. Does the shemen need to be mine when I come to be Mekayim, the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah? The Bach seems to say yes, and that is the Ikra mitzvah. But I find it a bit strange there is no din of lochem, only by dalad minim velokachtem lochem. If a person lights Ner Chanukah, he is the one lighting the Ner. It's his home, al Pesach Beisoy. Why does the shemen need to be his? So, this is a big discussion, and I won't go into many details. I mentioned last week it was my father's yahrzeit. So, I want to quote the Chiddush of my father, even though, we all want to learn a Mitzvah Shel Torah, and I will disagree with the Chiddush, but anyway, it's a schus for me to quote my father. Does the Shema need to be his in order to be Mekayim the Mitzvah Ner Chanukah? It seems to be the opinion of the Bach and Tufay Shai and Zayin. So my father wanted to bring a raya, and no, there's no need. Shabbos Yud Ches is a machlekes b'sham and b'seder whether there is an issa of shvisas kalim. We all know about the mitzvah saseh of shvisas behemtoi. If you have an animal, your animal cannot do a malacha on Shabbos, even though it's not you. You rented out your animal, you gave someone else, a goy, permission to use your animal. You have a mitzvah of shvisas behemtoi. According to Bishamai, you have a mitzvah of shvisas kalim. And the Gemara asks, according to Bishamai, ner kedeira. So how could a person light the ner Shabbos? The kli is doing a malacha. How could he have a pot on a kira that's gorof and kotum, but the pot is doing a malacha? It's continuing to be cooked. So the Gemara says he's a mafker the kalim. Afkura mafkelahu. So what is he going to do on Shabbos Chanukah? If he's going to be mafkir, then he's not nice to the mitzvah of Chanukah. So the fact that you could light Neiras Chanukah on Shabbos proves that there is no din of lochem. Why do I disagree? Shvisas Kailim is about the kli, not about the shemen. He's mafkir the kli, but he's not mafkir the shemen. And according to the Bach, it is the shemen that needs to be yours, not the kli that holds the shemen. Shvisas Kelim is not about the oil, it's about the kli. Lochem is about the oil and not about the kli. So this is a big discussion, but I think even according to the Bach, after all, the mitzvah is lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. That is the nusach we say in the brocha. And in the very sugya of lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, that is the fundamental source that the nusach habrocha always reflects the essence of the mitzvah. And the Gemara proves that hadlaka oisa mitzvah from nusach habrocha lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. So even according to the Bach, ikar mitzvah Chanukah she'eh shemen shelo dolek. But the mitzvah is still the act of hadlokas ner Chanukah. And that is why I think you need shlichus. Because shlichus applies to all the mitzvahs that are about a result. But you need a maisa, and not only the result. Mitzvahs that have no result are essentially avodas Hashem. And as I explained a few minutes ago, ein shlichus ba'avodas Hashem. And therefore, to me, I don't understand the approach that by Ner Chanukah you don't need shlichus. I don't think Ner Chanukah is any different than Bedikas Chometz. I don't think it's different than Hafroshas Tumas Amaisis, in which, once again, if I am Hafrosh Tumas Amaisis, I'm peilis of another person, I am the one that says the brocha. The one that performs the mitzvah says the brocha, and not the one that the mitzvah is incumbent upon him. It's his mitzvah, but I'm the one that's doing the mitzvah, I say the brocha. So once again, we need to understand, what does the Bach say? So let me share with you my understanding. Coming back to Siman Tov Lamed Beis, the sugya of Bedikas Chometz. So it's mefurish in Shulchan Aruch and all the Poskim, when I make a Shaliach to be Bedikas Chometz, the one that makes the bracha is the Shaliach, and not the Balabais. even if the balabais is there, the shliach makes the bracha. And all the achronim struggle with a fundamental question. Does shlichus apply to the entire realm of mitzvah shebedibur? Does shlichus apply to Kriya Shema, to Tefillah, to brachas, whether it's Birkas Hamazon or Birkas HaTorah or Birkas HaNahanan or any bracha? Does shlichus apply to any mitzvah shebedibur? The answer is simple, no. There is no shlichus, there is shomea ka'oina. But shomea ka'oina is not shlichus. But shomea ka'oina, you need to listen. When a person makes a shliach to perform a mitzvah, he doesn't need to be there. So how could a shliach make a bracha? The Mishnah Berurah in Tov Lamed Beis, and many other achronim there on the spot say, but if you're a shliach to perform the mitzvah, the shlichus is also chal on the bracha. Because im yesh shlichus be'ikor, yesh shlichus be'tofel. So if the shlichus applies to b'dikas chometz, to afroshes tumas hamaises, to mila, it applies to the bracha as well. So the Magen Avraham in Tov Lamed Beis struggles with the question, and he says, how could a person say Ashikadashonu b'mitzvah v'sivonu b'dikas chometz if it's not your mitzvah? It's not your house, it's not your chometz. And the Magen Avraham says, I don't understand, but it's a Gemara. I can't argue against the Gemara. Which Gemara? Psuchim Dav Zayin. The Gemara says, by Milas Haben, the Moel says the bracha Ashikadashonu b'mitzvah v'sivonu ala Mila. And we all know this. I was a sandik today. And the Moel said ala Mila. Then the father says, so the Magen Avraham says, it's a Gemara, I can't argue against the Gemara, but I don't understand why. How could a person say if it's not his mitzvah? But it's a Gemara. Comes along the Dogal Mervavo, and that is the Noida Biyuda in his Hagos and the Shulchan Aruch, and he says, Mila is different. Because in Kedushin Avchavtes we learn that Mrs. Mila is on the Beis Din as well. And the Rambam in Perasha Mishnah in Perek Rabbi Eliezer the Mila in Shabbos says Beis Din means Kol Yisrael. So the Moel is not only a shliach of the father, he has a din of Beis Din. And therefore we can't prove and we can't compare B'dikas Chometz to Mila. And I think the Magen Avraham is right. Because Beis Din steps in only if there is no father. As long as there is a father, and he wants to be Mekayim his mitzvah, there's no mitzvah ala Beis Din at all. Fascinating tshuva in Tashbitz, Chelik Beis Simen Ches, maybe it's Chelik Gimel Simen Ches, but I think it's Chelik Beis. There was a person in custody who was in jail, and he had a baby boy. In days of yore, unlike our times, there was no way to let him know that he had a baby boy. He was totally secluded, locked up, no email, no WhatsApp, no nothing. And the authorities didn't care. The Tashbit says, we are not going to be mal this child b'yoyim hashmini. We're going to wait till his father comes out of prison. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, as long as it takes. Because this mitzvah is the father's mitzvah, and nobody has the right to take this mitzvah away from the father. So a mevatel a mitzvah b'yom shmini yimol b'saralos, the Tashbit says yes, because it's not your mitzvah, it's the father's mitzvah. You have no right to take the mitzvah away from a father. Zochan liyadam shaloi b'fonav is not relevant. We do not find zochan only by mammon, only by kinyonim. There is no zochan la'adam shaloi b'fonav by mitzvahs. If I perform a mitzvah instead of the father, would he get sachar? He doesn't even know that I'm doing something. There is no zochan la'adam shaloi b'fonav only by mammon, only by acquisition. By mitzvahs, there is no mitzvah. Kol Yisrael Areiv means I need to help him perform his mitzvahs. I don't need to do a mitzvah instead of him. I'm not allowed to do the mitzvah instead of him. I'm taking away his mitzvah. He's going to have a mitzvah when he comes out of prison. It's his mitzvah. What right do you have to take away his mitzvah? You need to pay a Asar Zehuvim if you took away a person's mitzvah. But what we see from this Tashbitz is As long as there's a father, there's no mitzvah labeistin. The father is here. So the moyer is a shliach of the father, not more than that. So the Mogen of Rome is right. This Gemara proves that the same is babidikas chometz. But why? So neither the Dugel Mavova nor the Mogen of Rome explain why. Mishnah Brura, Rabbi Yankov Emden, other Achonim say, Shlichus doesn't apply to brochas. But if you're shliach on the mitzvah, the shlichus includes the brochas as well. To me, it doesn't make sense. If shlichus doesn't apply to mitzvah shebedibber, it doesn't apply to mitzvah shebedibber. And the fact you're a shliach on the mitzvah does not include the brocha. There is no shlichus by brochas. How do I understand this halacha? I wrote at great length a new understanding. Birkas mitzvah is not on the Baal mitzvah, but on the person that performs the mitzvah. That was the takona lechatchila. The Birkas mitzvah is not upon the person that's yotzi yedei chayva. Birkas mitzvah is always on the person that does the mitzvah. That was the takonas chachamim. And therefore, when I am by the chometz for another, a male that circumcises the child of another, a person that's mafresh tumas amaisis for another, when he says a brocha, it is his own brocha. He is not saying the brocha for another. It is his brocha. Because Birkas mitzvah lechatchila is upon the person that is doing the mitzvah, not upon the person that he is the Baal HaMitzvah. And therefore, when I make a shliach to b'dikas chometz and he says a bracha, he's not saying the bracha for me. It's his bracha and not mine. Birkas mitzvah is only al ma'isa ha-mitzvah. And the person that does the ma'isa ha-mitzvah, he is the one that says Birkas mitzvah. And now we have a new understanding of the Bach. So Bach says, there is a difference between mitzvahs that are choyves haguf, which rest upon the individual. Each and every Jew needs to perform these mitzvahs. By those mitzvahs, it is more reasonable to say the bracha is on the person that is his mitzvah. All the other sources in which you find that a shliach makes a bracha are circumstantial mitzvahs, not choyves haguf. If you happen to have a baby boy, you have a mitzvah of milah. It's not upon each and every Jew in a certain time. If you happen to have Peres Etzesora and you want to partake of Peres Sheyesh from Kiddush Etzesora, you need to be mafresh to the If you happen to have chometz in your home, there's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan to be by the chometz. If you don't have any chometz, you don't need to do bedika. You don't have Peres, there is no first Samaisis. You didn't have a baby boy, there's no mitzvah of milah. But a mitzvah that is part of Seder Hayom, in those cases, the bracha is not upon the person that technically does the mitzvah, but maybe in those cases, the bracha is only on the Baal HaMitzvah. Just like the mitzvah is his, and he is mechuyev in this mitzvah, it does not depend on the circumstances at all. So these mitzvahs are an exception. I think that is the understanding of the brach. Kiven shechoyves haguf, one cannot say the bracha on adlokas nachanaka only if the Baal Abayis or the Baalas Abayis is present. That would be my understanding of the Bach. Based on my fundamental understanding about why does a shliach make the bracha and not the Baal Abayis or the Baal Peres or the Avia Tinoik.
Rabbi, explain how would it help for the shliach to make the bracha in behalf of the Baal Abayis? The Baal Abayis is supposed to make the bracha to begin with. I don't understand how it works.
The shliach makes the bracha, but he needs to be moitzi the balabayis, and that is why the balabayis needs to be present. All we need to understand is what is the difference between Ner Chanukah, in which the Bach says, if the balas habayis is not there, the shliach doesn't make a bracha. Why would it be different than Mila, Bedikas Chometz, Afroshas Trumas Amaisis? These are the three mitzvahs in which we clearly find the shliach makes the bracha, regardless whether the Baal HaChiyuv is there or not. What is the difference? So according to the Machzis HaShekel, strange svara. Kosher las shliach b'mitzvah shebegufa, and therefore the Baal HaBayis needs to be there. And we asked, what does it mean, kosher las shliach? Either shliach applies or it doesn't. If it doesn't apply, why would it help if the person is there? If it does apply, what does it need to be there? The other approach says, by Ner Chanukah, you don't need shlichus at all. And if he's not a shliach, he can't say a bracha. Assuming that he says a bracha as a shaliach, and to which I argued, Ner Chanukah is no different than Bedikas Chometz. After all, the mitzvah is lahadlik, so we need shlichus. So my approach is, first of all, to understand why is it that the shliach makes the bracha. And I say, lo medin shlichus, ein shlichus bebrachas. And the fact that you're a shliach to the mitzvah, still, shlichus wouldn't apply to the bracha. The shliach makes the bracha because it's his bracha, not b'toyr shliach. The bracha is upon the person that is performing the mitzvah. But the Bach argues that is only by circumstantial mitzvahs. By a mitzvah that is not choives ha'odam. Afrosh Tumas HaMais is only if you have peres you want to partake from them. Bedikas Chometz is only if you happen to have Chometz in your domain. Milas Ben is only if you happen to have a baby boy. In these mitzvahs, the one that performs the mitzvah, it is his bracha. But a mitzvah that is a chiyuv al kol echod ve'echod mi Yisrael, that is like the mitzvahs that are essentially avodas Hashem. So on one hand, Ner Chanukah is about the result, so shlichus does apply. But the chiddush of the Bach is, mitzvah she choives aguf and choives hazman, the bracha does not belong to the person that performs the mitzvah, but on the Bala mitzvah. I can't have a compelling and convincing argument why, but I do understand it's different, and that is the opinion of the Bach. A mitzvah which is choives aguf, and the chiyuv is not born out of circumstances, but each and every yid, wherever he is mechuyev lahad like Ner Chanukah, and these mitzvahs, the mitzvah is upon the Baal HaChiyuv, and not upon the person that technically performs the mitzvah, and that is why it is only if the balas habayis is present and the shliach is moitzi the balas habayis that he could say the bracha. So that would be my understanding. So fundamentally, by all the other mitzvahs, the one that does the mitzvah, he is the one that says the bracha. Now, Chanukah is an exception, and we try to explain why. 3 different interpretations, 3 different svaras, and I think the one that I suggested is the more appealing one, and Yoiser Misyashev al Halev. As you probably realize, I'm not at my best, and I still have a bad cold, so this shiur today will be somewhat abbreviated. So the past 2 shiurim we spoke about Chanukah, and I want to come back to the weekly parasha. So this week's parasha, the story of Mechiras Yosef draws to a dramatic end, a dramatic climax. In the beginning of the parasha, when Yosef says, you need to bring Binyamin, Yankov is shattered, and Yehuda stands up and he talks to Yosef. And he says, no, this cannot be. And Yehuda says, Va'ata, I cannot bear to think what will happen to my father. And he says, Ki avdecho ora v'sanami yamavi, va'ato yeshev no avdecho tachas anar, eved la'adayni, v'lo yochel Yosef leis apek l'kol hanetzav ha'molav. And he breaks down crying. What brought Yosef finally to break down? So 3 weeks, the story is told in great detail. Mechiras Yosef. And so many questions arise. When we learn these parshiyos, kipshutan, Yosef seems to be enjoying tormenting his brothers again and again. What do you want from them? He seems to be taking pleasure in tormenting them. How do we understand Yosef's actions? The Or HaChaim asks another troubling question. Yosef had the means. He was second in power in the empire of the time, Mishnah Melech Mitzrayim. Why didn't he notify his father, I'm alive, Abba, stop mourning, I'm alive and I'm well. He knows his father is broken. He knows how much his father loved him more than all the others. He made no effort to notify his father that he's alive. So the Rachaim Kodesh says he didn't want to embarrass his brothers and shame them. Rachaim Kodesh is Ruach HaKodesh. But still, I always had difficulty understanding the Rachaim. On whom do you need to have more Rachmanis? On your old father, the tzaddik, or on your brothers that were the perpetrators after all? They did something terrible. Threw them into a pit, sold them to Eretz Mitzrayim. Who deserves your mercy more? Your father or your brothers? I always argued, maybe a different approach. Yosef knows his father. If he will send a message to his father, I'm alive, and his father will call his brothers, what's the story? And Yaakov will realize what happened. He will be more pained about knowing what actually transpired than thinking that he lost Yosef and Yosef was killed by an animal. Chayaro achlasu. It is just because Yosef cared for his father that he could bring himself to tell his father, I'm alive. Because he wouldn't be there. He can't make up a story. His father will call his brothers and question them. And when Yaakov will realize what his children did to Yosef and to him, his pain will be far greater than thinking Yosef was killed by an animal. And I was so excited to see that the Tosis Harosh says this, and I always teach my Talmidim, appreciate the yashtis and the pashtis of the Rishonim. And today we have Perush Harosh al Torah, and the Rosh asks this question, and a very brief comment, the Rosh says, that is why Yosef didn't tell his father what transpired. But how about Yosef's actions? Yosef had Ruach HaKodesh. The way we relate to the Avos HaKdoshim and to the Shvotim, you know, in the modern world, the world of art and literature, the world relates to the Ishei HaTanach as, powerful warriors. And Kosav Rambam, in his introduction to Shisha Sidra Mishnah, and I'm quoting the Rambam, Ma sheyasu Yehoshua v'Pinchas be'inyan hu iyun v'hasvora hu ma sheyasu Ravina v'Rev Ashi. So in the sculptures and in the statues and in the paintings, Ishei HaTanach were half naked, powerful, muscular people. No. Yoshua ben Nun and Pinchas ben Elazar did the same as Ravina v'Rev Ashi, as Abaya and Rava. Moshe Rabbeinu was first and foremost a teacher of Torah. Yoshua ben Nun was a Rosh Koilel. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen was a Dayan and a Talmid Chacham, and they all taught Torah. And the Gemara says in Yom Daf Chav Ches, Avraham Zokan v'Yoshev b'Yeshiva, Yitzchak Zokan v'Yoshev b'Yeshiva, Yankov Zokan v'Yoshev b'Yeshiva. Yes, they waged wars, but primarily there were tzaddikim, kedoshim. So the way we relate to Yosef, we need to understand the Pnimius. And my approach, why didn't Yosef tell Yankov he's alive? Yosef is aware that what's happening is not derech hateva. This is a mahalach eloki. These are godly events. Nothing is normal. Yosef knew his brothers. He knew they're all tzaddikim. How could my brothers do this to me? Throw me into a pit? Send me to a distant land? The Rambam writes in Pesha Mishnah at the end of Brochas, Eis lasos Lashem heferus zorosecha. Sometimes the Kodesh Baruch Hu takes away the bechira of a person. When a Kodesh Baruch Hu has a master plan, Kodesh Baruch Hu takes away the bechira of a person. There's no other way for us to understand David and Bathsheba, Yehuda and Tamar. These were the greatest tzaddikim, the shvotim, and the Ovis HaKdoshim. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu has his plan. And Melech HaMoshiach needs to come of David and Bathsheba. Melech HaMoshiach needs to be the offspring of Yehuda and Tamar. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's master plan. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of events and directs events. And sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes away the bechira of person because this is the way it needs to be. From A to Z, from beginning to the end, Yosef realizes, this is not derech hateva. My brothers shouldn't be doing this. And he's sold to Eretz Mitzrayim. He becomes a housekeeper by one of the most powerful people in Mitzrayim. And then the crazy Balabayas is on top of him. He's thrown into the jail, and two miskinim dream, and Yosef never before was a poisach halaymis. But he says, this is min hashamayim. Let's give it a shot. Who knows? Maybe this is what a Kodesh Baruch Hu's plan is. He tries his hand in pisach halaymis. It works. And then the crazy king has a bad dream, and he's brought out of jail, and he tries again, and woe and behold, new talent he never knew that he possessed, poisach halaymis. Yosef understands this is not derech hateva, and you don't interfere with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plans. Yosef is like on a chessboard, a little pawn on the chessboard, and it's obvious to him, this is something far greater than me and my brothers. And when a Kodesh Baruch Hu takes charge, you don't mess things up. So Yosef does nothing. He just goes with it, with the Kodesh Baruch Hu's plans. He thinks, I could mess up things. I can't know my father. He just waits to see What's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan? Yosef knows Baruch HaKodesh, the terrible price Klal Yisrael will pay for Mechiras Yosef. Chazal say that Asora Harugei Malchus were because of Mechiras Yosef. And Yosef knows if he won't bring his brothers to Tikkun and Shuv Shalema, the price Klal Yisrael will pay will be unbearable, unthinkable. Yosef understands it is his duty to be attacking the hate of Mechiras Yosef. In last week's parasha, when the Shvotim find themselves in custody and they start to make a cheshbon nefesh, v'yoimru ish Elochiv, aval Hashem em anachanu, alochinu, asher oinu tzoras nafshoi b'schanenu yaleinu, v'lo shamanu, al ken bo aleinu atzoro hazois. The brothers start making a cheshbon nefesh and they say, and they also begin to realize something big is happening here. Hashem amenachnu, alachinu, asher oinu tzoras nafshoi b'schanenu yaleinu v'lo shamanu. Is that all? You didn't hear him cry? You did it. You sold him. You threw him into the pit. But the real hate is he cried. And we didn't listen. He's our brother. And he was crying out to us, and we were deaf. We refused to listen. Ro'inu b'tzoras nafshei b'schanenu yaleinu v'lo shamanu. That is aim kol achatos. Yosef knows this is for him to fix. And Yosef goes against his teva, and his heart is broken to pieces. His neshama is torn to shreds. To pain his father, to pain his brothers, but he knows this is my duty. I need to bring my brothers to a tikkun. When does he finally break down? When Yehuda says, my brother is the culprit. Yehuda is convinced that Binyamin stole that cup. It is obvious. Yehuda is convinced Binyamin stole that cup. He is the thief. He committed this crime. He should be paying for it. But Yehuda is willing to pay the price instead of his brother. And he says, Yeshivnu avdechu tachas anar, v'anar yal im echov. He's my brother. He's my brother. And Yaakov is my father. And I cannot bear to see my father's pain. And I cannot bear and live with the feeling that I was the one that brought my brother. I am willing to pay the price. And I am willing to live out my life in slavery and in bondage to salvage my brother who committed a crime. That is when Yosef knows, Higati. I have achieved my goal. I brought brotherhood. I brought Achva back to the family. And that was the tikkun on Mechiras Yosef. And that is the moment when Yosef could stand it no longer. And he breaks down crying and he says, Ani Yosef, ha'oid ohi chai. That is the way I understand this saga, and that is why I think we need to learn this entire parsha of Mechiras Yosef. Why Yosef didn't intervene? Why didn't he take action? Why didn't he turn to his father? And why did he torment his brothers? And when did he finally break down crying and say, I could take this no longer? Ani Yosef. So that is my mahalach to understand this parsha. And it is all about ahavas achim and caring for your brother. So last week was my father's yortzeit, as I said last week, and I spoke about my father many times this week. So when I visited Auschwitz 16 years ago, and my father came back after 65 years, and he was with me in a group of Balabatim in Auschwitz, my father said, when he stood at the train station in Birkenau, the last words I heard from my father was, Moshe, kick the chim of Dana Bridalach. Because his parents and grandparents, 5 younger siblings were sent to the gas chambers. My father and 2 brothers were sent to life. The last words his father told him, my Zaidi told my father, watch over your brothers. And I think my father took those words not only literally, watch over your 2 younger brothers, but care for your brothers. And my father dedicated his life for Klal Yisrael. He was a great asken, besides being a great Talmud Chacham. He was the Klosenberg Rebbe's right-hand man in all his endeavors, in all the great things, whether it was Kotel Shas and the Laniada Hospital. So those were the last words my father heard from his father before they were torn away in Auschwitz. Look after your brothers. And that is what Yosef wants to achieve when Yehuda finally says, Ki avdacha orev esanar, Yeshiv nu avdachu tachas anar. And Yosef knows that is the tikkun. I have achieved what I needed to achieve. And then, so this is something we need to learn from this parsha. We should share b'sodas toivus, v'shenazker b'schus avos, beglal avos, t'shia bonim, v'savi geula levnei b'neiim. We should see Yeshua's Yisrael b'meiru v'yomeinu. Amen.